And today's movie starts as Mildred Hayes drives down her town and passes by 3 empty billboards. She then goes to an ad agency in town and she asks Red Welby, the manager, if she can put up 3 billboards that would last for a year. And after agreeing to pay $5,000 a month, she gives him a written note to put on the billboards. When Red reads the note, he figures Mildred is the mother of Angela Hayes, who was raped and murdered 7 months ago. The next night, Officer Jason is driving down the same road and he sees the first billboard that reads, "How come, Chief Willoughby?" He then passes the second billboard that reads, "And still no arrests?" He then stops there and talks to the guy that was putting up the billboard and he asks him what the ad is for. And the guy tells him he should check out the last one. Jason then drives to the last billboard, which was supposed to be read first, and it read, "Raped while dying." So if you drive from the other side and you read the billboards correctly, it reads, "Raped while dying and still no arrests. How come, Chief Willoughby?" As soon as Jason reads this, he calls Chief Willoughby, who was having dinner with his wife and 2 daughters, and tells him that they have a big problem. The next morning, Chief Willoughby goes to the ad agency which is in front of the police station to try to intimidate Red into taking down the billboards. But Red calls his bluff and tells him to F off. When Officer Jason hears about this, he goes to attack Red, but Willoughby stops him and orders him to back down. Here, Red mentions that he thought Jason only hated black people, implying that the story about Jason torturing a black suspect was true, even though it hasn't been proved yet. Hearing this really upsets Jason, but Bill drags him back to the station before he did something stupid. The police, who are still very concerned about the billboards, think that the buzz around it will die soon. But it gets worse for them when a local TV station does a story about it, and the story is seen by everyone in town. The next morning, Willoughby travels to Mildred's home in hopes of getting her to take down the billboards. He sympathizes with her, but explains that there has not been any suspects since the DNA didn't match anybody in the database. And she responds by telling him to test every man in town, even the state if need be, to find the man that killed her daughter. Bill tries to tell her that that's a violation of civil rights laws, and it's not something that's realistic. And next, Bill Willoughby drops a bombshell on her by telling her that he has cancer and will be dying in a few months. But she tells him that she knows that, and that she wants him to find her daughter's killer before he does die. Later that night, Mildred finds her son Robbie sitting at a table with Father Montgomery. And Montgomery tells her that Robbie told him that the other kids at school are giving him a hard time and bullying him because of the billboards. He also tells her that a lot of people in town are not happy with her because they see it as an attack on Willoughby, who's a very respected and liked police chief in the town. He then tries to advise her to take down the billboard, but she insults him and tells him that he and the people upset about the billboard are bad people for not supporting her and for not condemning the police for being incompetent. The next morning, as Mildred was driving her son to school, they pass by the billboards and Robbie finally snaps and yells at his mom that the billboards are just a reminder on how brutally his sister was murdered, and he's very angry at her for consciously making him relive the grief instead of moving on. And back in the police station, Willoughby finally caves in and asks Jason to get him Angela's case file. They then travel to the place where Angela's body was found, but they still don't have any new evidence. Later that day, Mildred goes to the dentist, who is one of the people who's angry at her, and after only examining her teeth for a second, he tells her that her teeth need to be taken out. As he grabs a drill to take out her teeth, she grabs the drill from his hand and runs it through his thumb. She's then taken to the station and questioned by Willoughby, and during the interrogation, Willoughby accidentally starts coughing blood on Mildred's face. She then goes to get help and he's taken to the hospital. Later, while looking in Angela's old room, Mildred has a flashback to the last time she saw her daughter. In the flashback, we see that they were arguing over Angela taking the car to go to a party late at night. Mildred refuses to give her the car and tells her that she can walk, and Angela then says that she hopes she gets raped on the way, to which Mildred agrees with, and the movie cuts back to the present and we see Mildred filled with sadness and regret. And next we see Mildred's abusive ex-husband Charlie coming to Mildred's house with his 19-year-old girlfriend. Charlie starts arguing with Mildred over the billboards, and he's very mad by the fact that she let the whole world know what happened to Angela. Then suddenly, he starts choking her, but Robbie stops him by holding a knife to his throat. And before he leaves, Charlie tells her that the day before Angela died, she told him that she wanted to move in with him. But back then when she asked, he said no, telling her that Mildred loves her very much. And now he tells Mildred that he regrets that decision and that his daughter would still be alive if only he listened and took her in. The next day, Mildred hears that her friend Denise has been arrested, and when she goes to the station, she finds out that the arresting officer was Jason. She then goes to Jason and demands he release her, but he tells her that he arrested Denise for drug possession and that if she wants her friend back, she's gonna have to take down the billboard first. Hearing this weird intimidation tactic doesn't faze Mildred at all. And she actually receives good news later when Red tells her that an anonymous person paid to cover the ad's payment for the next month. Meanwhile, Chief Bill Willoughby is given the clearance to leave the hospital. He takes his family out to the lake so he can teach his daughters how to fish. And later that night, after putting his wife and daughters to sleep, he goes out of his stable and shoots himself in the head and ends his life. His wife Anne hears the gunshot and wakes up to find a note on the table by Willoughby, and she breaks down crying when she realizes what happened. His note to her explains that he couldn't bear to watch her and the girls suffer as his health continued to deteriorate. When the news hits the station, everyone in the police department is very devastated to hear this, especially Jason, who blames Mildred and Red because they're the ones that set up the billboard. We then see Jason breaking down the ad agency's door and beating up Red and throwing him out the window. Red doesn't actually die from this, and Jason doesn't stop beating him. He continues to beat him in public until he falls unconscious. Everyone watches as this happens, including the new chief Abercrombie, who was watching from afar. And after witnessing what Jason did, Abercrombie follows him to the station and fires him on the spot. As our story goes back to Mildred, we see her watching the TV and hearing news that Willoughby offed himself. It's also reported on the news that Willoughby offed himself because of a billboard. And this isn't actually true, and hearing it makes Mildred hate everybody in the town. The pushback she was getting from the townspeople wasn't as horrible as the pushback her son was getting, as he kept getting bullied relentlessly at school. Later that day, we see something incredibly bizarre and weird happening as a man enters Mildred's shop and tells her that he saw her on the news and that he's sad he didn't get to grape her daughter. Mildred gets terrified of this man as he says this, and he walks toward her very slowly. But in that moment, Anne enters the shop and the man leaves. And Anne came to the shop to deliver a letter that Willoughby wrote for Mildred. As Mildred reads the letter, she learns that it was Bill who paid for the billboard, and he tells her that the billboard was a good idea and hopes that she finds the man that killed her daughter. Later that night, as Mildred and Robbie were driving home, they see all the billboards are on fire. They attempt to use a fire extinguisher, but it was already too late. The next night, Jason was at the station to get a letter that was left for him by Bill. The letter reads that Bill believes that Jason can be a great detective, but that he needs to be calmer and more loving. And meanwhile, Mildred breaks into the ad agency, gets on top of the building, and starts throwing Molotov cocktails at the police station that was across because she believes they burned down the billboards. Jason was still in the station reading the letter, and when he notices the fire getting out of hand, he takes Angela's case file and manages to get out of the burning building. Even though he's alive, he's still badly burned and is taken to the hospital shortly after. When he gets to the hospital, they place him in the same room as Red. Red doesn't recognize him at first and offers some juice, but Jason then tearfully apologizes for what he did to him. He refuses the apology at first, and then he himself starts crying, then gives the juice to Jason, indicating that he's forgiven him. While at home, Mildred is visited by one of the men that put up the ad, and he tells her that there was a duplicate ad that was made before. And with the help of some of her friends, the ad gets back on. We now go back to Jason, who's now almost completely healed, and he was at a bar drinking and overhears the man that threatened Mildred at the store bragging to a friend that he raped a girl and burned her body. Hearing this, Jason believes he's talking about Angela since she was also burned after being raped. Jason then attacks the guy scratching the man's face, but the man is stronger and beats him up. The next morning, Jason goes to Mildred's home and tells her that he might have found the man that killed her daughter. He also reveals to her that he took the man's DNA during a fight, and the sample is now being tested at the police station as they speak. As they talk, he reveals to her that he came over to tell her this because he doesn't want her to lose hope. Later that day, Jason is called to Abercrombie's office where he's informed that the DNA results were negative and that the man was out of the country in the time of Angela's death. Jason calls Mildred to tell her this and apologizes for giving her false hope, but she thanks him for trying his best as he has sparked in her the will to keep trying because she was contemplating giving up. Jason starts talking about the man that he thought killed Angela, and even though he's not the actual guy that killed her, Jason knows that this guy is a rapist and he knows where he lives. There's a sudden silence that happens for a few seconds, and Jason then asks Mildred if she wants company, and she responds yes. And in the last scene, we see Mildred and Jason driving to Idaho where the man lives, and they're going there to kill him. On the drive there, Mildred confesses that she's the one that set the police station on fire, but Jason already figured that out. And as they get close to their destination, they both express uncertainty about killing the man, but Mildred says that they can decide once they get there, and that's where the movie ends. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Make sure to leave me a like, leave a comment, also subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye!